Thanks and welcome back. We've been talking about distributed clouds in the enterprise, how they're an evolution of hybrid clouds and how they can solve some of the complexity that comes with hybrid clouds. Next, we're going to hear from our panel of experts who are focusing on the transformative capabilities of distributed clouds. We're joined by Salima Rice, the Chief Data and Analytics Officer for GRI, Srini Sankar, the Enterprise Data Leader for Hanover Insurance Group, and Matthias Baumhoff, the CTO of ThreatMetrix, which is part of LexisNexis Threat Solutions. This roundtable is led by Yellowbrick CTO, Mark Cusack. Mark, over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Hello and welcome to the panel discussion at the Yellowbrick Virtual Summit. Joining me today are three outstanding industry experts in data and analytics. And over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm really looking forward to a lively discussion around some of the challenges and opportunities emerging within the data and analytics space today. Now, before I let each of the panelists introduce themselves, I'd like to quickly frame the discussion that we're going to have. Well, many businesses today are seeking to leverage the speed and agility that the public cloud offers to their data analytics needs. But in reality, what we found is around 60% of businesses are actually adopting a hybrid cloud stance, where some of their data and analytics remains on premises, in their private clouds, in their own data centers, and some of their workloads are transitioning to the public cloud. Now, unfortunately, hybrid cloud deployments can actually introduce further complexity into what can already be a complex analytical ecosystem. Because now we have different hardware stacks and software stacks in different locations on premises and in the public clouds. So hybrid clouds can make the task of data management, data access, governance, security, and privacy a little bit more difficult because of the heterogeneous nature of the infrastructure involved. Now, as a result, new ecosystem patterns and deployment approaches are emerging to address some of the complexities that hybrid clouds introduce. Now, one of these new patterns is called distributed cloud. So today, we're going to be talking about distributed clouds and in particular, the role that data warehouses will play within this emerging architecture. So joining me to discuss the challenges and opportunities that distributed clouds will introduce are Salima Rice, Chief Data Officer at Geometric Results Incorporated, Srini Sankar, the Enterprise Data Leader at Hanover Insurance Group, and Matthias Baumhoff, Chief Technology Officer for ThreatMetrix at LexisNexis. Welcome everybody.
Hello.
So I'd like to start with you, Salima. Could you introduce yourself and introduce GRI and your role and responsibilities there?
Sure. I'm Salima Rice, and I am GRI's Chief Data and Analytics Officer. I have been with GRI for about 4 years now. GRI is the world's oldest and largest managed service provider for human capital management. We're owned by Bain Capital, and we have about 150 customers globally where we manage their extended workforce. So we have a very large data sources. We use a lot of data, external data, and I've been in the role of Chief Data Officer pretty much my whole career. So right. I'm very happy to be here and to be on the panel with you guys.
And thanks for joining us. And clearly, you're pushing the boundaries in HR analytics.
Yes.
All right. Fantastic. So Srini, you're an enterprise data leader at Hanover Insurance. Could you tell us a little bit about Hanover and your role in the business there?
Yeah, sure. I head the data and analytics, information management, information architecture for the Hanover Insurance. I've been in this role now 6 years. I came early 2015. So my role is also new to Hanover Insurance. Hanover Insurance is in the business of property and casualty insurance, personal, home auto. It's one of the oldest companies in America, and I believe it's one of the earliest NICE stock market exchange company. I probably when NICE started trading, I guess. So it's a small and mid-sized, middle market and specialty focused insurance business. We have three major business lines, like personal lines, commercial, and specialty. So my role is to support cross-functional across all the business units, like all the data analytics needs, tools, technologies, and Mark, as you teed up, right, like the governance. So that's been my number one priority for the past, now close to 3 years, ever since I kicked off an enterprise data governance program. So we'll be able to talk more on that topic as well.
Great. Looking forward to it, Srini. Thanks for joining us. And Matthias, you're actually a long-standing Yellowbrick customer. Please tell the audience about yourself and about ThreatMetrics.
I am actually a long-standing Yellowbrick customer, and I have been with a company called ThreatMetrics for more than 10 years. Started out in Australia as a startup and grew big through the years. We have been acquired 2018 with LexisNexis Risk Solutions, and now we are part of like a bigger family. ThreatMetrics is an online transaction risk screening service, basically, and we have created over the years one of the largest contributory databases in our space, what we call Digital Identity Network, and which is a large database of more than 150 billion keys, modeling the behavior of people in the online world. And we are operating at around now 6 billion transactions that we do each month, and therefore we need a database to drive all that. I'm overseeing as a CTO all the technical aspects of the solution. And of course, we have also the analytics part, but also like all the backend infrastructure I'm responsible for. And I'm very happy to be on this panel and share my insights.
Fantastic, Matthias. Yes, and obviously I know a little bit about your use cases, and hopefully we get a little bit more insight into them as we go on through today. So I'm going to start with the first question for the panel. So fingers on buzzers. No, I'm just kidding. It's not a competition. But so by 2023, it's been suggested that more than 50% of enterprise data is going to be generated outside of the data center, outside of the public cloud. And analysts also suggest that this figure is going to rise to around 90% of all data generated by 2025. So how will analytical ecosystems need to change to address the fact that data is going to be highly distributed in fashion? And what do you think are some of the challenges and opportunities that arise, especially when you think of some of the near real-time use cases that are emerging given this distributed data landscape? Selena, could you give us your sort of thoughts on that topic?
I think the biggest complexity is around the foundational stuff. So we learned from the generational curse of 2008, 2009 that having a foundation, having data quality, data governance, having the metadata, that layer that is truly the foundation of how we get to great analytics is very difficult when you start looking at some of that data that it doesn't really come from traditional sources. So I think that's one of the complexities. But I also think that there are opportunities that this type of architecture is going to bring to the table. I mean, and for my team, especially, we've kind of coined the phrase architecting the data for analytics. So there's a purpose that we might have data that is in multiple clouds based on where that data is located. That might be one thing, but not all of that data is needed for analytics. Example might be time card data. You might not need that for analytical purposes. So limiting the amount of data that you actually need for true analytics and putting that in a more distributed cloud has been a game changer for us. We've actually been able to deliver an analytics within our product offering at a speed that I've never seen before, right? I mean, in terms of, being able to turn around product development with 2-week sprints and monthly releases, and the velocity that the program teams are able to do in this environment is just extraordinary. I mean, definitely something that, coming up, what you and I talked about, some of the older legacy programs and the way that we architected data previously, we spent 85% of our time wrangling the data. So by having just the specific data, by having the data already wrangled, by having it truly architected so that the data scientists can come in and start their work specifically on the data that's needed to solve that business problem. For many years, we identified what our most critical data was based on reverse engineering a report. Now that paradigm has changed to our most critical data is really the data that we need to solve a problem. And so by architecting the data that way and storing the data that way, it's been very good for us.
Now that's really interesting. I think you bring up a really good point about that 85% of time spent on manipulating, moving, preparing data, and I think from what I also gather from your comments, leaving the data within and close to the subject matter experts, the consumers of the data, the people that understand it, makes it much easier, reduces the friction, and you get faster time to value. So that's a great insight.
Yep.
So Srini, obviously within your space, you've got probably a complex ecosystem of data with lots of different applications, whether it's claims processing, fraud analysis and detection. But what's your thoughts around how some of these challenges and complexities and opportunities might arise within this distributed data landscape?
Yeah, having someone like I have been in the building the data warehouse, like having experience like for 20 years with many large organizations before Hanover as well. Right, see, we started, right, like we said, like as you mentioned, Mark, right, like in terms of we have to now like pull all the data into one central data repository and then give that for all the businesses to do reporting and analysis, right? Like that's been the case. So we started doing that, and then like we said, like, hey, now it's not gonna work that way. Like you gotta like beyond data warehouses, like you gotta really give dependent and independent data marts for the businesses to look at only their domain data and do their analysis because of performance challenges that we've seen. Traditional relational database management systems are not meant for data warehousing applications. Then came the appliances like, oh, here you are like the supercomputer to manage data warehousing. So now in the last 5 years, we've started building data lake, right? Like, okay, data lake, which is another disparate architecture, right? Like, hey, it's not dimensionally modeled or properly modeled for reporting. It's like a lake for true data discovery and predictive type of analytics. So I myself have done that. I like the big data strategy that I brought in like way back in 2016, building the data lake. And we also started building siloed data lakes for the business, like very similar to the data mart aspect of it that we started doing with the data warehousing, right? Like, but now it's starting to converge, right? Like the lake house. Okay, so why build a separate data warehouse? Why build a separate data lake? Now can you build a lake house? So we are also at that inflection point now, but I'm now challenging that architecture as well, right? Like, do I need to build a lake house, or can I have a logical layer that can go to any disparate source systems, be it the warehouse or data lake, or as you mentioned, like we have a complex claim system, we have a policy management system, like we have a 60-year-old mainframe data source that is one of the critical data sources. Now, can I have a logical layer, a data access layer of sort that can go to all these and bring in the data, the raw format, which is well suited for most predictive analytics? Like, yeah, I can understand, like, you have to build a proper transformational model for operational reporting, financial reporting, but for other analytics. So I think that is where the opportunities lie.
And that's very much what I see talking to customers as well. That idea of leave the data where it lies, move the analytics to the data, and then think about data fabrics, data meshes.
Exactly.
There are kind of components or services that you would layer over something like a distributed cloud. Matthias, could you tell us a little about your thoughts on this subject?
Of course, and I think that this is a super interesting topic, and essentially everybody who wants to offer a low latency service worldwide faces this problem, because you have data enter locally, and you need to make if you categorize decision and analytics, there's this near or this real-time use case and this near real-time use case, which is impossible that you can offer this service on the low latency if you have a central data set. That's just no way you can do that. So everybody who has created such systems already had to think about how can I have distributed point of entries, have streaming analytics at there where the data enters the system, have my real-time decisions and the near real-time decisions and analytics right there in the distributed part, but I still need to run analytics on the global scale. And how can I bring that together? And then there's all these hard to solve use cases like replication, conflict resolution, and even like stuff like eventual consistency. What do I do if two pieces of my puzzle are modified at two different geographical dispersed regions at the same time? How can I bring that together? And I think people solve the use case with lots of different tools and trying to bring a lot of different technologies together. And the better we can have either data warehouse systems or analytical systems that can deal with this distributed data, we are in a better decision to make both kinds of decisions, that those near real-time decisions and our global analytical insights into data. And I think that's going to be a good challenge, but I agree that close to 90% of the data will have this problem in like a few years.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think this is where we're getting really into the crux of distributed clouds and thinking about how we simplify this problem. I mean, it's obviously not a silver bullet because, as we all know, when you're generating and driving towards business outcomes, there's people, processes, organizational changes that come along with it as well. But if we just focus on the technology for the moment, I mean, distributed clouds are seen as a natural evolution of the hybrid cloud, where we take those common services in the public cloud and put those same stacks everywhere. So now you've got a homogeneous infrastructure, a single plane of control across all of these geographic locations. And so what role do you think these distributed clouds are going to play in helping to address this kind of decentralized nature of data generation? And Matthias, let's stick with you. I mean, what about the rise of distributed clouds, and what benefits do you think they're going to bring in helping to join these data silos together?
So you're completely right. Distributed clouds is a natural extension of like the cloud move in general, where we are in the same position also as a company to to take advantage of all those advantages of the cloud, where the easy scaling and all these the flexibility of the cloud is really very attractive. However, you still have the demand of those distributed systems, and distributed cloud can then solve use cases like data regionalization. You operate in different countries with different requirements for data residency, and even how do you treat PII. And this is one thing where I think that's also a big topic. And also, which data can you share across regions and which data you can't share across regions? Sometimes you need to anonymize data, you need hash data to be able to share that. Sometimes you need to aggregate data, and distributed clouds can really bridge the gap here of being highly agile in this while still maintaining privacy regulations of each countries in which you operate in.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I agree. I mean, that data sovereignty problem is real, and I think that is one area that distributed cloud infrastructure could play a role in helping to support. So, Salima, again, what's kind of your take on how distributed clouds might impact the landscape?
I definitely agree with Matthias that when we talk about data that needs to live in the country of origin, I think that's a big part for us as well. I also see where we have a lot of organizations that have had systems in multiple countries where they want to kind of bring it all together, kind of almost a persona view of your analytics. So analytics that are built for a CIO of a global organization, that level needs to kind of look at a certain amount of data from every country, right? And in my particular world, we have vendor management systems, and one we might have one vendor management system for one company, but we also might have as many as 10 or 11 vendor management systems, maybe one or two in each country that they do business. And so, we don't want to be in the business of moving data out of a country. So by, aggregating only the data that we need for analytics within the distributed clouds has allowed us to be able to provide that persona-based analytical models for them. There's also, when we look at supply and demand and being able to bring in, very anonymized market data about rates and about the market and the types of skills rather than looking at the location and the person, right? I mean, we don't need all of that PII data anymore in order to find out, where's the concentration of Python developers in the world. And, with remote working now, you can find anybody anywhere, right? If you are willing to do that. So by having the data architected this way, we're able to answer questions so much faster than we could previously.
Got it. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So you're already deriving business value out of distributed clouds and leveraging it clearly. So that's great to hear. Srini, what's your view on how distributed clouds might change things?
Sure, like as Salema and Matthias mentioned, right? Like I couldn't agree more, right? Like it's all how we bring analytics to the data, right? Like so as we talked earlier in terms of right, like hey, leave the data where it is, but bring the analytics to the data, like without worrying about now the power of cloud, the scalability, the high availability, like in a global setup for the distributed organization, it makes it all the more possible.
I think that's a really important point. So final question is actually getting more specifically around data warehouses, a subject very, very close to my heart, as you can imagine, because obviously they often hold some of the most valuable data in a company's data estate. And what should we think about data warehousing in a distributed cloud? Are there any new use cases? Do you think that data warehouses will be put to when we think of data being distributed in such a geographically and logically disparate sense? And so, Matthias, why don't you start us off?
Of course. Also, very interesting topic also for me. And you're right, data is like very important, but it's one of for me, it's one of three pillars in a successful SaaS business. The other two would be analytics, where you can actually drive insight, and also a platform where you can actually onboard products that actually collect data, which is also quite interesting. What I can see is if you offer services that are very, very dedicated to customers, you can actually spin up instances dedicated with customer data from a bigger data set in a cloud instance. And if I would have a data warehouse solution that supports that, you can actually free up your data warehouse solution to do all the global tasks, while all the customer-specific tasks can be outsourced in their own instance that possibly run even in their region, in their country, and they can do their own analytics with the help of our analytics with a data warehouse solution that actually supports that. It means also dealing with the replication if new data arrives in the central location, that they will be also distributed in this cloud location, and all the benefits that a flexible data warehouse solution brings, so that we can actually drive more specific value of like customer-centric value about whatever we have collected with our system. I think that's a very interesting use case, and it would be very exciting if we can put that into reality.
That is a really nice idea. I like the idea of potentially kind of provisioning, parachuting a data warehouse into a particular geographic region, and you're almost using it as a way of data sharing and collaboration, or pushing your data closer to the customer, so reducing data latency, supporting data gravity requirements. So that makes a lot of sense. Srini, what is your thoughts on data warehousing specifically within this emerging distributed cloud space?
data warehouses are not going away, right? Like, so if someone thinks, right, like, oh, you've had data warehouse for 15 years, 20 years, now time to retire that, like, I don't think so. Like, data warehouses are not going away. There will be use cases for the data warehouses, right? Very specifically to the operational and financial type of reporting and analysis. Like, I think that is where data warehouses play a major role. And that is where, like, you require a lot of transformation, right? Like, so you have to model it in such a way that it's suited for those, in our case, right? Like, so insurance, like we have SOX compliance, we have each individual state regulatory compliance, and we have various financial controls and operational reporting. So that is where, like, the data warehouse plays a major role. Like, to Matthias's point, right? Like, so if we have to lift and shift it and, like, distribute it on the cloud, right? Like, that is a possibility, right? Like, if we're not going to, like, break it, like, but are we going to add more into the data warehouse? So, like, this is something that I've been thinking through, like, for a few years now, right? Like, so we all built data warehouse because 10 years, 15 years ago, like, that's the only way to consolidate all the data into a single warehouse and then open it up for reporting and analysis. But now there's no reason to do that, right? Like, you can leave the data where it is, and you will be able to do that distributed cloud and logical data access layer. But for those who have invested, right, like, so if we have invested, like, for the last 15 years with the Hanover organization, even before my time, when the Hanover started building data warehouse, so, like, okay, are we going to, like, completely move off of that? Like, definitely not. Like, so we would like to leverage that, but the new use cases will be in such a way that anything specific to that finance operational type of reporting is what will belong in the data warehouse.
Right. So if I were to play that back, I mean, it sounds like in your strategy overall, when you talked about data lakes earlier, you're very much just focused on using data warehouses for the right task. And, data lakes have their own use cases. If you're using SQL, highly structured relational model data, probably a data warehouse is where it should be. I think we'd all agree with that. So, Salima, finally, what are your thoughts on? I mean, you sound to be quite far ahead in your journey towards distributed clouds. Anyway, I mean, what role is data warehousing playing in your business?
It's funny, listening to everybody. I was thinking about how fortunate I am that 4 years ago when I joined, it was what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to build? How do you think the data should be architected? And because they didn't have anything that, I can say that we could have used at the time. So, coming from the days of Kimball and Inman, I thought, well, we're not going to build my grandfather's data warehouse, right? So we kind of took the approach that, we've got a blank slate. Like, if we could do it over again, how would we make it different? And so we actually don't have one data warehouse anymore that is for everything. Primarily because in people analytics, which is at the core of what is the ultimate, top level for us, is that there's a lot of PII. So by not bringing the world together and having it in distributed clouds right now was the way to go originally. Just because, I'm a firm, I actually wear the scars from 2008 and the financial crisis. And so I was, we're not going to, someday GDPR is going to be here, and we don't want to go back and redo it. So we put the controls in place in the country of origin where the data is created. Now, there are some countries where we could combine, but I think that there's so much value in having data only that you need to be able to use for analytics, aggregated for analytics. And I think that the data that you need to store for storage, and having that, whether it's a lake house or a warehouse, it has its own place too, and that's okay. But being able to have kind of a hybrid area now where we can ingest any data from anywhere in any format. So whether it's structured or unstructured, we have the ability to do that.
And that's incredibly important, isn't it? I mean, you've been in a great position where you're able to build up that stack from a kind of almost a blank piece of paper and get it right and iterate over time. So that's great to hear. Well, we're coming towards the end of our time, so I just wanted to thank my panelists. I want to thank Salima, Srini, and Matthias for joining me today for what was a lively discussion and some great insights there. And thank you very much to all of the audience, and I hope you're enjoying the Yellowbrick Summit so far, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.